Thanks for having me. So I'm going to present you a study plan today on the role of trust and touch in human-robot interaction. And I am particularly interested in social humanoid robots that are designed to be companion robots and particularly useful for people suffering from social isolation, specific disabilities or learning disorders. But the question when we want people to interact with a specific technology and other people as well is trust. How can we promote trust in the other party? So by definition, trust arises from a state of vulnerability when my resources are not enough, but I am also willing to depend on another party. Then there's where trust comes from. And the other can be trustworthy because of their functional abilities, their skills to help me achieve a certain goal, but also for personal aspects. I trust someone that I perceive having integrity and benevolence towards myself. And there are individual dispositional or also situational factors that, of course, modulate one's willingness to depend on someone else for a certain specific situation. And when it comes to robots, we don't know whether we can actually trust them. And most importantly, we don't know whether this type of touch would be mainly functional because we perceive them as being tools, or maybe we can also perceive them as having human-like trustworthiness characteristics and also personal social characteristics. That's the open question. But we are interested in promoting trust, not just assessing trust. And in this respect, affective touch is particularly powerful because it's this intimate skin-to-skin contact that promotes social bond and connection. And there's evidence in literature suggesting that this can also promote trust in robots, but only if this type of touch is perceived as appropriate and pleasant. And it's not always the case. People do not always perceive this type of touch as pleasant, as human-to-human touch. And we also see that robots' touch fail to activate the same neuropsychological and emotional responses. So what aspects of human-robot touch can influence how this is perceived and how these interact with trustworthiness is still an open debate. And to start addressing some of these questions, I am planning to conduct a neuropsychological study in immersive virtual reality where participants can be immersed in first-person perspective experiences of receiving touch by either another human or a robot. And I'm particularly interested in looking for the optimal type of affective touch when we interact with these two different types of partners. And I'm going to start with a no-touch condition. Maybe we don't want the robot to touch us. That's possible. Maybe we appreciate only visual touch in virtual reality. So as there's a virtual environment, we do not necessarily expect to receive touch, actual touch on the skin. But I'm also checking on the importance of receiving this haptic stimulation. And I'm going to compare the effect of real touch, skin-to-skin gentle stroking at the optimal velocity to activate those fibers that are selectively responding to this type of affective emotional touch. And then I'm using a type of digital touch using a visuo-tactile arm bell actuator that creates this gentle stroking on the arm, with the idea that maybe we expect the robot to touch herself in a different way compared to what humans do. And maybe this digital type of touch can be more appropriate when we interact with something that is not completely and not like really a human being, but more like a technology. I'm interested in the subjective ratings of participants, so whether they perceive these two partners as trustworthy in different conditions, whether they perceive touch as being appropriate and pleasant. And I'm also interested in individual differences related to social touch preferences, propensity to trust, previous experience with robots, if any, and also individual characteristics such as cultural and background and gender that can impact these social processes. As for the physiological activity, I'm looking into whether heart rate decreases when people perceive this type of touch as more pleasant, and also when they perceive increased level of trust. I'm also using FNIRS to look into the neural activation in response to these different scenarios. And I'm interested in the multisensory integration hubs, with the idea that the richer the multisensory tactile experience, the greater the activation of these neural areas. And I am particularly interested in the contribution of those areas that are selectively activated by affective rather than discriminative touch, and also the prefrontal cortex activation, which is related to cognitive monitoring control, and it's thought to decrease when we experience trust, when we can, give away some of our control and trust and depend on someone else. So that's the plan. I really want to thank all the collaborators. Thank you all for your attention. I very much look forward to your feedback and questions.
Thank you, Irene. So yeah, we have a project proposal rather than some results to discuss, but the same rules apply. So let's hear how you did, Anna or Rochelle. Do you have any feedback? We also have Uta and Simone in the wing. So if either of you have anything to say to Irene, do jump in. Would Rochelle go ahead?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this talk as well, Irene. It was very, very nice. So before delving into your talk specifically, I just want to say that both these two talks now, both Lihi and yours, Irina, the slides were really, really nice. They were not too busy. Maybe sometimes you could cut down on some of the text, things like that, but they were just nice on the eyes. They were not too colourful, things like that, but you used images. Both of you used images in a really nice way to illustrate, some of these points. And I'm seeing that more and more in talks, that people are really good at actually just making a nice presentation which looks good, and that obviously really helps the person understand it. So I just wanted to highlight for both of these. I really, really liked both of your slides. And thank you, Irina, for this talk. It's a very interesting question, touch in robots and trust in robots. And actually, in one of your more beginning slides, you made a really interesting point, which I really picked up on. That I think is something that we could all do in our talks, is that you ask questions on your slides. And I really like that. I think the main question you had, can we trust robots? And instantly, I'm sure that everyone watching it was like, can we trust robots? Joe, this is a really good point. It's a fundamental question about your research, but something that is much bigger than this as well. And that, I think, especially you did it at the beginning of the talk, really draws people in. And they've probably got this question. I'm sure I had this question in my head all throughout your talk. And so actually, I think I might use this in some of my talks as well, to kind of have a question, which is a bit like your hypothesis, but it's a bigger question than this. And so that theme was really well presented, I think, throughout your whole slides. And so I think you should definitely use this technique again.
I will. Thank you for your feedback.
Anna, do you want to hop in from there?
Yes, thank you so much. That was really, really fascinating. I'm really curious what you get, because I'm also doing studies on human-robots interaction, but from a different perspective, not on touch, but super interesting. Yeah, so I felt that the flow was like nice, so not too much information, the slides very nice and everything else. I would just unpack a bit the slides. So for instance, like you had some, when you list the questionnaire and you put like colors and just like probably just like putting one after another rather than just one line, but this is very mind detail. And also because probably I'm a philosopher, depends on audio and audience, I'll be like, I want you to say a bit more speculative at the end. It's like, what is big picture? What is this going to give us, right? So why is it so important to ask this, and why I was going to impact society and everything else. So that's something I would like, it's like the payoff. And at the end, just like a couple of, you don't have to just like put something on the slide like a text, but at least an image. So why it's important to actually stay in touch with robots. For instance, me as a philosopher will be like, why do I actually need to touch a robot? That is doing this stuff and I'm doing mine. So why is it so important to actually, getting, close contact? And I think that's because you're doing all this research on touch and social touch and affective touch. Towards the end, I would like to hear more about this, like why this could be like important for the society, and make some speculation about the next steps
Ute
But,
is
yeah.
raising her hand old school style. I love it. Go ahead, Ute. You're muted, Ute. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yes, old school in all respects. I was also very taken by the idea about trusting robots, and I was reminded that we generally treat robots as an outgroup. We can despise them. That's a very easy thing for us to do. You know, we have you know, they're aliens, and therefore they're not, you know, we don't belong to them. So I was just wondering whether your project would be, you know, it could be extended eventually into comparing identical situations of touch with an in-group, human in-group and human out-group member, because you could find that there were very different physiological responses. Even so, the setup would be exactly the same. So this just, you know, just as an observation for future extension.
Yeah, thanks for this comment and suggestion. We are actually working on that. Another branch of this project is about cultural differences and in-group, out-group differences, if any. So we really want to use this setup and the virtual reality environment to change the partner and the match between the partner and the person's avatar, so that we can manipulate quite easily this combination and see what are the differences.
I don't want to take up all the time, but what was really interesting about these two topics, and especially in light of Ute's comment, is that even without groups, one of the things we'll do when meeting somebody who may or may not be part of our group is to stretch out our hand and touch them, because it's an easy non-verbal way to try and bridge that gap. So I think that that's very much in keeping with this idea that there may be a bridge towards these aliens, these robots, through touch, if we need it, which is the obvious big question, Anna. Do we need to trust robots or aliens? But maybe the touch is the key. I don't know if anybody else has any feedback for Irene or Olivier. Otherwise, because we have our two pioneers, not old school, just the only school, because we have Ute and Simona with us, we might just stick to time. Otherwise, yeah, Rochelle, did you have anything more to say?
I just wanted to highlight as well, you both were kind of saying something which I do like, and just to pick up what you said, Mel, is that touch is a language. Touch is a non-verbal language, and it's a powerful language that you understand instinctively. I say this often. And then I think, you know, all this research capitalizes on that. It's very interesting.
I know, I wish I could give you guys all a hug and say hello. But because we can't, we'll just say thank you, Irene, to Lehi, to the experts who've given them some feedback, given up their time and expertise today. Thank you so much. It's been extremely helpful for all of us, I'm sure, because we never stop.